Chapter 20. Your Part in the Negro Conference. For 8 or 9 years now, it has been our custom to hold here what is known as the Tuskegee Negro Conference. A number of years ago it occurred to some of us that instead of confining the work of this institution to the immediate body of students gathered within its walls, we perhaps could extend and broaden its scope so as to reach out to and try to help the parents of the students and the older people in the country districts, and, to some extent, if possible, in the cities also. With this end in view, we, some years ago, invited a number of men and women to come and spend the day with us, and while here, to tell us in a very plain and straightforward manner something about their material, moral, and religious condition. Then the afternoon of that same day was spent in hearing from these same men and women suggestions as to how they thought this institution and other institutions might help them, and also how they thought they might help themselves. Out of these simple and small meetings has grown what we now call the Tuskegee Negro Conference, which in the last few years has grown until it numbers from 900 to 1,200 persons. We not only have that large number of persons, most of whom come from farms and are engaged in farm work, but we now also have the Workers' Conference, which meets on the day following the Negro Conference. This Workers' Conference brings together representatives from all the larger institutions for the education of the Negro in the South. Now these meetings for this year begin next Wednesday morning, and the practical question that I wish to discuss with you tonight is what can we do to make that conference a success? What can you do for the conference? And what can the conference do for you? I wish you to grasp the idea that is growing through the country, that very few institutions now confine themselves in their work to mere teaching in the classroom in the old-fashioned manner. Very few now confine themselves in their work to the comparatively small number of students that they can reach in that way, as they did a few years ago. In many cases they have their college extension work. In one way or another, they are reaching out and getting hold of the young people and getting a hold on the older people as well. And just so, to a very large degree, through this conference, Tuskegee is doing something of the same kind of thing. During these few days, we shall have hundreds of the farmers, with their wives and daughters, gathered here. We want each and every one of you here in the institution to make up your mind that you can do something to help these people. We want each one of you here tonight to feel that he or she has a special responsibility during the time these people are gathered together at Tuskegee. We sometimes speak of it as their one day of schooling in the whole year. That is, the one day out of the whole 365 days in the year when, perhaps, they will give the greatest amount of attention to matters pertaining to themselves. In inviting them here, not only the teachers and officers of this institution have a responsibility, but each and every student here also has a responsibility. I want you to feel that, and see to what extent you can take hold of these people while they are here, to inspire and encourage them, so as to have them go away from here feeling that it is worth their while to come to the Institute for this meeting, even if, as is true of some of them, they have come a long distance. Some of these people who will come here are ignorant, so far as books are concerned, but I want you to know that not every person who cannot read and write is ignorant. Some of the persons whom I have met and from whom I have learned much are persons who cannot write a word. Very many of the people who will come here may not be able to read or write, but we can learn something from them notwithstanding, while they are here, and they can learn something from us. I want you to take delight in getting hold of these people and taking them through our shops, guiding them through our various agricultural and mechanical departments. Be sure that you exert every effort possible to make them comfortable and happy while they are here. Heretofore, the students have been so generous at the time of this meeting that many of them, if necessary, have given up their rooms that these people might have a comfortable night's rest. I do not know where you have slept, but I do not think that in the history of the school a student was ever asked to give up his room to any of these people that he did not gladly and freely do so. I believe that you are going to do the same thing this year. I want you also to remember that you not only can help the conference to be a success by being polite and kindly to the farmers who come from this and other southern states, but also by being polite and attentive to the representatives from the large institutions that will be here. We will have present representatives from every large institution engaged in the education of our people. It means much for the principals and instructors in these large colleges and industrial schools to leave their work and come as far as many of them do, to spend these days here. We have a responsibility on their account. We desire them to feel that it has been worth their while to leave their work and spend their time and money to come here for these meetings. We wish them to get something out of our industries here. We wish them to get something out of the training here, in every department, something which they can take back to their own institution to make their work there stronger and better. Now as to yourselves, you can get something out of this conference for yourselves by getting hold of everything possible, so that when you go out from Tuskegee, you will have just that much more helpful information to put into practice. I want to see you go out through the South and establish local conferences. Call them together and teach the same kind of lessons that we teach at these gatherings at Tuskegee. You can get the most out of this conference by putting into practice this effort to make other people happy. To get the greatest happiness out of life is to make somebody else happy. To get the greatest good out of life is to do something for somebody else. I want you to find the persons who are most ignorant and most poverty-stricken. I want you to find the persons who are most forlorn and most discouraged, and do something for them to make their hours happy. In doing that, you will do the most for yourselves. I want each boy and each girl who belongs to this institution to be deep down in his or her heart a gentleman or a lady. A gentleman means simply this: a generous person, one who has learned to be kind, one who has learned to think not of himself first, but of the happiness and welfare of others. Let us put this spirit into our conference day the coming week, and the day and week will be the greatest and most successful we have ever had. Let our resolution be that the persons who come here, whether they represent a university, a college, an industrial school, a farm, or a shop, let our resolve be that when these people leave here, they shall take away with them from Tuskegee something that will make their lives happier, brighter, stronger, and more useful. Chapter 21. What is to be our future? Last Thursday afternoon, I received a telegram from a gentleman stopping for a time in a city in Georgia, asking me to come there at once on important business, and being rather curious to know what he wanted of me, I went. I found that this person was in the act of making his will, and that he had in mind the putting aside of a considerable sum in his will, some 20,000, in fact, for this institution. The special point upon which this gentleman wished to consult me was the future of the institution. He said that he had worked very hard for his money, that it had come as a result of much sacrifice and hard effort, and that there were friends of his who were beseeching him to use his money in other directions, because they thought it would be more likely to do permanent good elsewhere. and so he wished to know what the future of this institution is likely to be, because he did not care to risk his money upon an uncertain venture, one that was likely to prosper for a few years and then fail. He said that he would not like to give his money to an institution where it would not go on through the years, accomplishing a certain amount of good. Accordingly, the question he repeated to me over and over again was, "What is to be the future of Tuskegee?" He wished to know whether, if we were given the money, it would go on from year to year, blessing one generation after another. My point in speaking to you tonight is to emphasize what I think our good friend Professor Brown has already brought to our attention in one or two of his talks to us this week: the importance of making this institution what it ought to be, what its reputation gives it, and what its name implies. More and more I realize and I remember that the gentleman of whom I have spoken repeated this to me with great emphasis, that so far as the outside world is concerned, Tuskegee is sure. You need not have the least doubt that the institution will be supported. If we keep things right at the institution, if it is worthy of support, the moneyed people of the country will support it and stand by it. More and more each year, this impression grows upon me, and more each year there are convincing evidences of the fact that the permanence and growth of this institution do not rest upon whether the people of the South or the people of the North are going to support it with their means. I have the most implicit confidence that the Institute is going to be supported. But the question that comes to us with the greatest force is, are we going to be worthy of that support? Shall we be worthy of the confidence of the public? That is the question that is most serious. That is the question that presses most heavily upon my heart and upon the hearts of the other teachers here. Now, these questions can be answered satisfactorily only by evidence that each student, each individual connected with the school in any way, no matter in how low or high a capacity, is putting his or her whole conscience into the work here. When I say work, I mean study of books, work of the hand, effort of the body, willingness of the heart. No matter what the thing is, put your conscience into it. Do your best. Let it be possible for you to say, "I have put my whole soul into my study, into my work, into whatever I have attempted. Whatever I have done, I have honestly endeavored to do to the best of my ability." The questions which this gentleman asked me, and similar kinds of questions, are being asked over and over again by people all over the country. The question can be answered only by our putting our consciences into our work, and by our being entirely unselfish in it. Let every person get into the habit of planning every day for the comfort and welfare of others. Let each one try to live as unselfishly as possible, remembering that the Bible says, "He that would save his life must lose it." And you never saw a person save his life in this higher sense, in the Christ-like sense, unless that person was willing, day by day, to lose himself in the interest of his fellow men. Such persons save their own lives, and in saving them, save thousands of other lives. Such questions as these can be satisfactorily answered not merely by our putting our consciences into every effort, no matter what the effort may be, but by improving day by day upon what has been done the day before. In large institutions and establishments, it is comparatively easy to find persons who will sweep a room day by day, or plough a field during certain seasons of the year, and do other work at certain other seasons of the year. But the difficulty comes in finding persons who make improvements in the manner of sweeping rooms, of ploughing fields and planting corn. The question for us is, are we going to put so many brains into our efforts every year that we are going to go on steadily and constantly improving from year to year? Are you going to get into the habit of so thinking about your work here that the habit will become, as it were, a part of yourself, so that when you go out into the world, you will not be satisfied to take a position and go on in the same humdrum manner, but will not be satisfied until your work has been improved in every possible detail and made easier, more systematic, and more convenient? We must put brains into our work. There must be improvement in every department of this institution every year. It is absolutely impossible for an institution to stand still. It must go forward or backward, grow better or worse each year. An institution grows stronger and more useful each year, or weaker and less useful. This institution can grow only by each person putting his thought into his work, by planning how he can improve the work of his particular department, by constantly striving to make his work more useful to the institution, by keeping the place where he works cleaner, and making his work more businesslike and more systematic. That is the only way in which the questions which people all over the country are asking about this institution can be satisfactorily answered. You will find that people will look to us more and more for tangible results. Not only here, but all over the country, our race is going to be called on to answer the question, what can the race really accomplish? It is perfectly well understood by our friends, as well as by our enemies, that we can write good newspaper articles and make good addresses, that we can sing well and talk well, and all that kind of thing is perfectly well understood and conceded. But the question that will be more and more forced upon us for an answer is, can we work out our thoughts? Can we put them into tangible shape so that the world may see from day to day actual evidences of our intellectuality? Last winter I was in the town of Clinton, Iowa. I think I had never heard of the place before, and when I got there I was surprised to find it a place of more than 16,000 inhabitants. The gentleman who was to entertain me wanted to take me to a colored restaurant. I expected to go into a restaurant of the kind operated by our people generally, and I was very surprised when he took me into a large 2-story building. I found the floors carpeted, and everything about the place as pleasant and attractive as it was possible to make it. In fact, the restaurant compared very favorably with many in the largest cities in the country. I found the waiters clean, the service good, and everything conducted in the most systematic manner. And there was not the least thing, except the color of the proprietor's skin, to show that the place was operated by colored people. Afterward, my friend took me into another establishment of the same size, operated in the same creditable manner by another colored man. In both I found that these gentlemen not only carried on a regular restaurant business, but manufactured their own candies and ice cream, and did a sort of wholesale catering business. I asked the white people there what they thought of the colored people, and I did not find a single white person who did not have the most implicit confidence in the colored people. The trouble was that there were not many colored people there. That accounts possibly for the good opinion which the white people have of them. But you see what just 2 black men can do. These people had never seen many black people, but fortunately for us, they had with them 2 of the best specimens of our race that I have ever seen anywhere in this country. As a result, you do not find anyone cursing the black man in that town. Everybody had the utmost confidence in black people, and respected them. Just in proportion as we can establish object lessons of this kind all over the country, you will find that the problem that now is so perplexing will disappear. Until we do this, we shall not be able to talk away or to argue away this prejudice. We cannot talk our way into our rights. We must work our way, think our way into them. And you will find that just in proportion as we do this, we are going to get all we deserve. Chapter 22. Some Great Little Things. I am going to speak to you for a few minutes tonight upon what I shall term some great little things. I speak of them as great because of their supreme importance, and I speak of them as little because they come in a class of things which are usually looked upon by many people as small and unimportant. But in an institution like this, I think they often hold first place. Certainly, they come under the head of important things that we can learn. You will remember that in the sermon the chaplain preached this morning, he mentioned the threefold division of our nature: the physical part, the mental part, and the spiritual part. What I shall refer to tonight has largely to do with the material, the physical part of our natures. There are certain little things that each one of you can learn now in connection with the care of your bodies, which, if left unlearned now, will perhaps go without being learned all your lives. You are now, as it were, at the parting of the ways. You are going to make these habits a part of yourselves, or you are going to let them escape you forever, and be weak in a measure all your lives for not having made them a part of yourselves. I am going to speak very plainly, because I feel that such talk means nothing unless it is in language which everyone can appreciate and understand. Now, among the first things that a person going to a boarding school should learn, if he has not already learned it at home, and I am constantly being surprised at the number who seem to have thus left it unlearned, is the habit of regular and systematic bathing. No person who has left this habit unlearned can reach the highest success in life. I mean by that a person who does not get into the habit of keeping the body clean cannot do the highest work and the greatest amount of work in the world. When it comes to competing with persons who have learned the habit of keeping the body in good condition, you will find that the first named persons usually win in the race of life. I think many of you have already learned from your physiologies that when it comes to the combating of disease, where two persons are on a sick bed with the same disease, the one who is habitually clean in his personal habits has a far greater chance for recovery than the one who has not learned the habit of cleanliness. You will also find that the person who is in the habit of caring for his body is in a better condition of study. He is in a condition to bear prolonged and severe exertion, while the person whose body is unclean is in a weak condition. Take the matter of the teeth. Persons cannot call themselves educated and refined who do not make the matter of the cleanliness and proper care of their teeth an important part of themselves. When I speak of making such a thing a part of yourselves, I mean that you should make it such a strong habit that to leave it undone would seem unnatural. Some person has defined man as a bundle of habits. There are many habits that I wish you to make a part of yourselves by practicing so constantly that they may really be said to have become that. There is the matter of the care of the hair, which everyone should make a part of himself. There is also the proper care of the fingernails. Now all of these are common things, but they are great things. I should not recommend very highly a young man or young woman who went out from this institution as a graduate and had not learned the habit of caring for the teeth, hair, and nails systematically. Are you making these lessons a part of yourself? Take the young men and young women who have been here 2 or 3 years. Have you grown to the point where you are dissatisfied and all out of sorts when your hair is not combed, your fingernails dirty, and your body not in the condition it should be in. If you have not reached that point when you come to graduate, then there will be something wrong with your education, and you are not ready to go out from this institution, whether you are in the senior class or in the preparatory class. Another thing, I confess that I cannot have the highest kind of respect for the person who is in the habit of going day after day with buttons off his clothes. There is no excuse for it, when buttons are so cheap. I wonder how many of you could stand if I were now to ask all to stand who have every button in its place. I cannot have the best opinion of a girl who will let a hole remain in her apron day after day. Nor can I think well of a man who does not remove a grease spot from his coat as soon as he discovers it. You have more respect for yourselves, and other people have more respect for you, when you get into the habit of polishing your shoes, no matter where you are, but especially when you are at school. Every man should get into the habit of polishing his shoes. See to it that they are in proper condition at all times. I need not repeat here, after what I have said, that it is of the utmost importance that every person wears the cleanest of linen. If I speak to you so plainly, it is because I want you to make these matters a part of yourselves to such an extent that they will be essential to your happiness and success. I want every girl who goes away from here to be so neatly perfect in her dress that she cannot be happy if there is any detail unattended to. And I want the same thing to be true of the young men. Let these things have an important bearing on your education here, and on your life hereafter. And then, above all things, although on account of the number of students here, you are very much crowded in your rooms, and will have to make all the harder effort on that account, get into the habit of being orderly and neat. School your roommates to the point where they will have a place for everything. Always know where to put your hands on anything you may want in your room, whether in the light or in the dark. Then there are one or two other little things. You should have quiet in your rooms, at your work, or in your talk with your fellow students. Do your work quietly. Get into the habit of closing doors quietly. You cannot realize how much all these little things add to your happiness and to the manhood and womanhood which you are going to build up as the years go on. And then, in conclusion, so order your lives that you can form the habit of reading. Set aside a certain amount of time each day, even if it be not more than 4 or 5 minutes, for reading and studying aside from your lessons. Read books of travel, history, and biography. I want you to patronize the library this year as never before. In it are great numbers of books by authors of the highest rank. Be regular in all your habits. Have a regular time for studying, for recreation, and for sleeping. And last, but far from least, set aside a regular time for thinking, for meditating with yourself. Take yourself up, pick yourself to pieces, see wherein you are weak and need strengthening. Analyze yourself. Get rid, as it were, of all the weights that have been holding you back, and resolve at the end of each week that you will walk upon your dead selves of the week before. If you will go on making that kind of progress, you will find at the end of the 9 school months that you are stronger in everything essential to good manhood and good womanhood. Chapter 23. To Would-Be Teachers. Since very many of you whom I see before me tonight will spend some part of your lives after you leave here as teachers, even if you do not make teaching your life work, I am going to talk over with you again a subject on which I have spoken elsewhere, how to build up a good school in the South. The coloured schools of the South, especially in the country districts and smaller towns, are not kept open by the state fund, as a rule, longer than 3 or 4 months in the year. One of the great questions, then, willing teachers and parents, is how to extend the school term to 7 or 8 months, so that the school shall really do some good. I want to give a few plain suggestions which will, I think, if carefully followed, result in placing a good school in almost every community. In this I am not speculating, because more than one Tuskegee graduate has built up a good school on the plan I outline. In the first place, the teacher must be willing to settle down in the community and feel that that is to be his home, and teaching there his chief object in life while he is there. Not only must he not feel that he can move about from place to place every 3 months, but he must feel that he is not working for his salary alone. He must be willing to sacrifice for the good of the community. The next thing is to get a convenient schoolhouse. Usually in the far South, the state has not been able to build a schoolhouse. How is it to be secured? A good schoolhouse should be carefully planned. Then the teacher or someone else should go among the people in the community, coloured and white, and get each individual to give something, no matter how small an amount if in money, or if not in money, how little in value, for purchasing lumber. When we were getting started here at Tuskegee, one old coloured woman brought me 6 eggs as her contribution to our work. If enough money cannot be secured by subscription and collection to pay for the lumber, a supper, a festival, entertainment or church collection will help out. After the lumber is secured, the parents should be asked to club in with their wagons and haul it free. Then at least one good carpenter should be secured to take the lead in building. Each member of the community should agree to give a certain number of days' work in helping to put up the structure. In this work of building, the larger pupils can help a good deal, and they will have all the more interest in the schoolhouse because they have had a hand in its erection. In these ways, by patient effort, a good frame schoolhouse can be secured in almost any community. Where it is possible, take a 3 or 4 months public school as a starting point, and work in cooperation with the school officers. But do not let the school close at the end of these 3 or 4 months, because if that is done, it will amount to almost nothing. As soon as the teacher goes into a community, he should organize the people into an educational society or club, and there should be regular meetings once a week, or once in 2 weeks, at which plans for the improvement of the school should be discussed. There are a number of ways for extending the school term. One is for each parent to pay 10, 15, 25 or 50 cents each month during the whole time the school is in session. Frequently parents who cannot pay in cash can let the teacher have eggs, chickens, butter, sweet potatoes, corn, or some other kind of produce which will help to supply the teacher with food. Another plan is for each farmer to set aside a portion of land and give all that is raised upon it to the school. Still another plan, and one that is being successfully carried out in at least one place, and one that I think much of, is for the teacher to secure, either by renting or purchase, a small tract of land, say from 2 to 5 acres, and let the children cultivate this land while they are attending school. If in this way 3 bales of cotton can be raised, and a variety of vegetables and grain also, the produce can be sold and the school term extended from 3 months to 6 or 7 months. Some parents may object to this at first, but they will soon see that it is better to let the school close at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so that the children may work on the school land for an hour or two, and in this way keep the school open 6 or 7 months, than to let it close entirely at the end of 3 months. There is another advantage in this latter plan. The teacher can in this way teach the students, in a practical way, better methods of farming. Short talks on the principles of agriculture are worth much more to them than time spent in committing to memory the names of mountain peaks in Central Africa. Very often there is enough land right around the schoolhouse for the pupils to cultivate. In every case where it is possible, the teacher should buy a home in the community and make his home in every way a model for those of the people who live around him. The teacher should cultivate a farm, or follow some trade while not teaching. This not only helps him, but sets a good example for the people in the community. If the teacher be a woman, there are a few communities where she cannot add much to her income by sewing, dressmaking, or poultry raising. Chapter 24. The Cultivation of Stable Habits. I am going to speak with you a few minutes this evening upon the matter of stability. I want you to understand when you start out in school that no individual can accomplish anything unless he means to stick to what he undertakes. No matter how many possessions he may have, no matter how much he may have in this or that direction, no matter how much learning or skill of hand he may possess, an individual cannot succeed unless, at the same time, he possesses that quality which will enable him to stick to what he undertakes. In a word, he is not to be jumping from this thing to that thing. That is the reason why so many ministers fail. They preach a while, and then jump to something else. They do not stick to one thing. It is the same with many lawyers and doctors. They do not stick to what they undertake. Many businessmen fail for the same reason. When an individual gets a reputation, no matter what he has undertaken, of not having the quality of sticking to a thing until he succeeds in reaching the end, that reputation nullifies the influence for good of the better traits of his character in every direction. It is said of him that he is unstable. I want you to begin your school life with the idea that you are going to stick to whatever you undertake until you have completed it. I take it for granted that all of you have come here with that idea in mind, that before you came here you sat down and talked the matter over with your father and mother, read over the circulars giving information about the school, and then deliberately decided that this institution was the one whose course of study you wished to complete. I take it for granted that you have come here with that end in view. And I want to say to you now that you will injure yourselves, your parents, and the institution, and you will hurt your own reputation unless, after having come here with the determination to succeed, you remain here for that purpose, and remain for the full time until you receive your diploma. I hope every individual here, every young man and woman at the school, is here with the determination that he or she will not give up the struggle until the object aimed at has been attained. You are at a stage now when, if you begin jumping about here and there, if you begin in this course of study and then go to that course of study, you will very likely be jumping about from one thing to another all your life. You must make up your minds, after coming here, to do well whatever you undertake. This is a good rule not only to begin your school life with, but also to begin your later life with. Perhaps I was never more interested than I was last evening in Montgomery, while standing on one of the streets there for an hour. I seldom stand on any street for an hour, but last night I did stand on that street for an hour in front of a large, beautiful store that is owned by Mr. J. W. Adams, and watched the notice taken of the display of millinery made in his store windows by two girls that finished their academic and industrial courses at this school, Miss Jemmy Pierce and Miss Lydia Robinson. The first Monday in October is always the day in Montgomery for what they call the millinery openings. On that day the stores which handle such goods all make a great display of ladies' hats and bonnets. It was surprising and interesting to note how these two girls had entered a great city like Montgomery, and had taken entire charge of the millinery department in a large store. Hundreds of people stopped to comment favourably upon the taste that was displayed in the decoration of those windows. Now all of this work was done by two Tuskegee graduates, and the complimentary remarks that were made came not only from coloured people, but from white people as well. No one could tell from the windows of that store whether it was a coloured or a white establishment. Many of the white ladies who were standing there did not know that they were standing in front of a store that was owned by a black man. It had none of the usual earmarks about it. Usually when you go into coloured establishments, you see grease on the doors or on the counters, or you see this sign or that sign, that this is a coloured man's establishment. Those of you here who are going to go into business after you leave school do not want to have any such earmarks about your establishments. Such a store as that of Mr. Adams is the kind of a store to have. Now these two young women have made a reputation for themselves. They went into the millinery division while they were here, and they remained until they graduated. One of them, I believe, had not finished in the millinery department when she received her academic diploma, and so she came back last year and took a postgraduate course in millinery. It is interesting and encouraging to see these two young women succeeding in their work, and it all comes from their determination to succeed, and because they had sense enough to finish what they had undertaken. That is the lesson that you all want to learn. If you do not learn it now, in a large degree you will be failures in life. You want to be like these young women. You want to fight it out. Now if you mean to get your diploma, you are going to have a hard time. Some of you are going to be without shoes, without a hat, without proper clothing of any kind. You will get discouraged because you have not as nice a dress or as nice a hat as this person or that person. I would not give a snap of my finger for a person who would give up for that. The thing for you to do is to fight it out. Get something in your head, and don't worry about what you can get to put on it. The clothes will come afterward. You are going to be greatly discouraged sometimes, but if you will heed the lesson of fighting out what you have undertaken, that same disposition will follow you all through life, and you will get a reputation, because people will say of you that there is a person who sticks to whatever he or she undertakes. One of the saddest things in life is to see an individual who has grown to old age, with no profession, with no calling whatever, from which he is sure of getting an independent living. It is sad to see such individuals without money, without homes, in their old age, simply because they did not learn the lesson of saving money and getting for themselves a beautiful home when they ought to have done this. And so, all through life, we can point to many people who have not learned this lesson, that for whatever they undertake, they must pay the price which the world asks of them if they would succeed. If we are going to succeed, we must pay the price for what we get. And he who accomplishes the most, accomplishes it in a humble and straightforward way, by sticking to what he has undertaken. He who does this finds in the end that he has achieved a tremendous success. Chapter 25. What You Ought to Do. It is comparatively easy to perform almost any kind of work, but the value of any work is in having performed so that the desired results may be most speedily reached, and in having the means with which the worked labors arranged so as to meet certain ends. It is the constant problems of those organs which have charge of the well-being of the body to cause digestion to take place, so that what is nourishing in the food may reach every part of the body, not only the portions near the organs in which digestion takes place, but also the most extreme parts of the different members. Just so it is the aim of all persons who are accustomed to making public addresses to try to make those who are far away from them hear them as well as those who sit near. In this same way, it seems to me more and more every year it is going to be the main object of all our schools in the South to make their influence felt most forcibly among those who are remote from them. How can we reach the masses who are remote? I mean remote from educational advantages and from opportunities for encouragement and enlightenment. The problem in the rural districts is different because of the vastness of the number to be reached and of the frequent difficulty of reaching them. We must keep this fact before us, then, that institutions of this kind are of little value unless they can pave the way to make the results of their work felt among the masses of the people, who are especially remote from these institutions. It is a fact, as most of you know, that we very seldom meet with a thoroughly well-educated teacher in the rural districts, in despite of the passing of over 30 years since we became men and women. You know, too, that the same thing is, in too large a measure, true of the ministry. The responsibility for reaching these people, for affecting them for good, rests upon the young men and young women who are being educated in these southern institutions today. What are you going to do as your part towards reaching these people, towards carrying to them the light which they need so much and so earnestly long for? Difficult as this problem is, it is not a discouraging one, because these people are ready to follow the light as soon as they are sure that the right kind of light is set up before them. You very seldom meet with a colored man who is not conscious of his ignorance, and who is not anxious to get up as soon as he finds himself down. In this respect, the problem is encouraging. One of the ways in which the problem is serious is with respect to labor. In almost every city and town in the South, a large proportion of the colored people are shiftless so far as manual labor is concerned, although I think there is already improvement. The masses of our people are given to thrift and industry, and to unremitting toil in their way. The hard thing about it, the discouraging thing, is that they do not know how to realize the results of their toil, because they have no education and little idea of industrial development. They do not know how to make their work tell for what it ought to. As a general thing, the people, those in the country especially, do not ask anybody to come and give them food, clothing, and houses. All they ask is for some person, some honest, upright man or woman, who is interested in their welfare, to come among them and show them how to direct their efforts and their energy, show them how best to realize the results of their work, so that they can supply their own moral, religious, and material needs, and educate their children. And you will find that wherever this institution, Hampton, Talladega, Fisk, Atlanta, or any other, can put in the midst of the people young men and young women who will settle down among them and make their lives object lessons for the people, plant a good school, and convince the people that the teacher has settled down there to stay through encouraging or discouraging circumstances, you will find that such a teacher will not only be encouraged, but will be supported materially. In every way, there will be an opportunity for that person to revolutionize the community. That opportunity is open to you. It is an opportunity which is being opened to no other set of young men and young women who are being educated anywhere else in the world. Are you going to appreciate the beauty and grandeur of this opportunity? I was talking with a gentleman last night who has recently spent some time in one of the southern states, and he told me that in hardly any country district in that state was there a public school which is kept open longer than 4 months. He tells me that the average salary in some of those districts is little more than $15 a month. In another state the conditions of the people is about the same. In our own state, perhaps, the conditions are worse even than in the states referred to. In some counties in Alabama, the people are this year receiving no money to run their schools more than 3.5 months in the year, except of course in the cities and towns. In some counties the teachers are being paid only $12 to $20, and there are possibly some where the teachers get no more than $10 from the state fund. I was talking with a gentleman from another state not long ago about the material condition of the people in that state, and he told me that so far as their industrial life is concerned, the masses are in a very bad condition this year, that they are too often at the mercy of the landowners. I refer to the people who run the large plantations, and that the same thing is largely true of all of the cotton-raising states. I need not go on to describe to you the moral results that must inevitably follow such a condition of things. I need not take your time to tell you that there can be little morality or religion among people who are so ignorant as these people, and who do not know where they are going to get anything to eat. It is needless to describe the train of moral evils that must follow such conditions as these. What I have attempted to describe to you as existing today in these country districts may not be very encouraging, but it seems to me that every young man and young woman who has enjoyed the privileges afforded by this and by other institutions in the South, I speak especially now to the members of the next graduating class, should feel that such conditions as these present one of the most inviting fields possible for labor. Every young man and woman here is being educated by money that is given by others. None of you are paying for the education you are receiving. You might pay for your board, but you would have to do that elsewhere. Everyone must pay for his or her own clothing, but the cost of buildings, rent, tuition, expenses, and other matters pertaining to the institution you do not pay. Your education, in a large measure, is a gift from the public, and it seems to me that one of the first things you should do is to repay, to as large an extent as is possible, with your services, what has been spent in giving you so large a part of your education. This is a debt that you owe not only to yourselves, but to our race and our country. It is a religious debt as well, that you will be willing to go out into these country districts and suffer, as it were, for a few years, until you can get a foothold, so that you can plant yourselves in one of these dark communities. I feel sure that you would not have to suffer very long. I believe that the hardest part of the struggle would come during the first 2 or 3 years. When you can convince the people that you are in earnest, the battle is won. When you can convince them that it is cheaper to keep an educated teacher than to keep one who is ignorant, and when you can once demonstrate your value to them, not only in an educational respect, but industrially and morally, the battle is won, and these people will stand by you and support you. In many cases, it is my belief that you will eventually find yourselves better supported financially than you would if you had gone to work in cities and large towns. No matter from which side you look at this problem, good is bound to come from it. And while we are talking about the reward that will come as a result of your services, let me tell you that no greater satisfaction can come to anyone than that which you will get from the worship and praise which will come to you from these old mothers and fathers who will be benefited by your services. I know of instances where teachers have gone and planted themselves in these country districts who, even if they do not make such a very great success financially, receive the love and most sincere worship from year to year, because of the feeling of gratitude which the people among whom they have settled have for them on account of their having helped them in so many ways. This same kind of pioneer work had to be done all over the world before the right kind of civilization was planted. It was such work as this that the people did who settled the Great West, where they were deprived of the comforts of life. The people who planted Oberlin College in what was then a wilderness had to suffer many such hardships. The men who went to Washington, Oregon, and California and established what now large cities there are had to suffer many such hardships. They had to suffer just what you must and should suffer. Are you going to suffer for your own people until they can receive the light which they so much need? If the young men and women before me have the right kind of stuff in them, they will do this. Most certainly do I hope that you are going to carry out into these dark communities the light which you receive here from day to day. I hope you will fill these districts with men and women of education. When you go out from here with your diploma, whether it be next May or at some other time, resolve to plant yourself in one community and stay there. No matter what your work is, you cannot accomplish much if you become the wandering Jew. Find the community where you think you can use your life to the best advantage, and then stay there. In the time that has elapsed since this talk was given, I think there has been improvement in many of the country schools in the South, and in the general condition of the people, as described to me then. Booker T. Washington. Chapter 26. Individual Responsibility. I have referred in a general way before this, when I have been speaking to you, to the fact that each one of you ought to feel an interest in whatever task is set for you to do here, over and above the mere bearing which that task has on your own life. I wish to speak more specifically tonight on this subject, on what I may term the importance of your feeling a sense of personal responsibility, not only for the successful performance of every task set you, but for the successful outcome of every worthy undertaking with which you come in contact. You ought to realize that your actions will not affect yourselves alone. In this age it is almost impossible for a man to live for himself alone. On every side our lives touch those of others. Their lives touch ours. Even if it were possible to live otherwise, few would wish to. A narrow life, a selfish life, is almost sure to be not only unprofitable, but unhappy. The happy people and the successful people are those who go out of their way to reach and influence for good as many persons as they can. In order to do this, though, in order best to fit oneself to live this kind of life, it is important that certain habits be acquired, and an essential one of these is the habit of realizing one's responsibility to others. Your actions will affect other people in one way or another, and you will be responsible for the result. You ought always to remember this, and govern yourselves accordingly. Suppose it is the matter of the recitation of a lesson, for instance. Some one may say, "It is nobody's business but my own if I fail in a recitation. Nobody will suffer but me." This is not so. Indirectly, you injure your teacher also, for while a conscientious, hard-working teacher ought not to be blamed for the failures of pupils who do not learn simply because they do not want to, or are too lazy to try, it is generally the case that a teacher's reputation gains or loses as his or her class averages high or low, and each failure in recitation, for whatever cause, brings down the average. Then, too, you are having an influence upon your classmates, even if it be unconscious. There is hardly ever a student who is not observed by someone at some time as an example. "There is such a boy," some other student says to himself. He has failed in class ever so many times, and still he gets along. It can't make much difference if I fail once. And as a result he neglects his duty and does fail. The same thing is true of work in the industrial departments. Too many students try to see how easily they can get through the day or the work period, and yet not get into trouble. Or even if they take more interest than this, they care for their work only for the sake of what they can get out of it for themselves, either as pay or as instruction, which will enable them to work for pay at some later time. Now there ought to be a higher impulse behind your efforts than that. Each student ought to feel that he or she has a personal responsibility to do each task in the very best manner possible. You owe this not only to your fellow students, your teachers, the school, and the people who support the institution, but you owe it even more to yourselves. You owe it to yourselves because it is right and honest, because nothing less than this is right and honest, and because you never can be really successful and really happy until you do study and work and live in this way. I have been led to speak specifically on this subject tonight on account of two occurrences here which have come to my notice. One of these illustrates the failure on the part of students to feel this sense of responsibility to which I have referred. The other affords an illustration of the possession by a student of a feeling of personal interest and personal responsibility, which has been very gratifying and encouraging. The first incident, I may say, occurred some months ago. It is possible that the students who were concerned in it may not be here now, or, if they are, that it would not happen again. I certainly hope not. A gentleman who had been visiting here was to go away. He left word at the office of his wish, saying that he planned to leave town on the 5 o'clock train in the afternoon. A boy was sent from the office early in the afternoon with a note to the barn, ordering a carriage to take this gentleman and his luggage to the station. 4:30 came, and the man had his luggage brought down to the door of the building in which he had been staying, so as to be ready when the team came. But no team came. The visitor finally became so anxious that he walked over to the barn himself. Just as he reached the barn, he met the man who was in charge there, with the note in his hand. The note had only just that moment reached this man, and of course no carriage had been sent, because the first person who felt that he had any responsibility in the matter had only just learned that a carriage was wanted. The boy who had brought the note had given it to another boy, and he to someone else, and he, perhaps, to someone else. At any rate, it had been delayed because no one had taken enough interest in the errand to see that whatever business the note referred to received proper attention. This occurred, as I have said, several months ago, before the local train here went over to Cheehaw to meet all of the trains. It happened that this particular passenger was going north, and it was possible by driving to Cheehaw for him to get there in time to take northbound train. If he had been going the other way, though, towards Montgomery, he would have lost the train entirely, and, as chanced to be the case, would have been unable to keep a very important engagement. As it was, he was obliged to ride to Cheehaw in a carriage, and the time of a man and a team, which otherwise would have been saved, was required to take him there. Now when such a thing as this happens, no amount of saying, "I am sorry," by the person or persons to blame will help the matter any. It is too late to help it then. The thing to do is to feel some responsibility in seeing that things are done right yourself. Take enough interest in whatever you are engaged in to see that it is going to come out in the end just as nearly right, just as nearly perfect as anything you can will go towards making it right or perfect. And if the task or errand passes out of your hands before it is completed, Do not feel that your responsibility in the matter ends until you have impressed it upon the mind and heart of the person to whom you turn over the further performance of the duty. The world is looking for men and women who can tell one why they can do this thing or that thing, how a certain difficulty was surmounted or a certain obstacle removed. But the world has little patience with the man or woman who takes no real interest in the performance of a duty, or who runs against a snag and gets discouraged, and then simply tells why he did not do a thing, and gives excuses instead of results. Opportunities never come a second time, nor do they wait for our leisure. The years come to us but once, and they come then only to pass swiftly on, bearing the ineffaceable record we have put upon them. If we wish to make them beautiful years or profitable years, we must do it moment by moment as they glide before us. The other case to which I have referred is pleasanter to speak about. One day this spring, after it had got late enough in the season, so that it was not as a general thing necessary to have fires to heat our buildings, a student passing Phelps Hall noticed that there was a volume of black smoke pouring out of one of the chimneys there. Some boys might not have noticed the smoke at all. Others would have said that it came from the chimney. Still others would have said that it was none of their business anyway, and would have gone along. This boy was different. He noticed the smoke, although he saw that it came from the chimney, and if so was probably no sign of harm. He felt that any smoke at all there at that time was such an unusual thing that it ought to be investigated, for fear it might mean danger to the building. He was not satisfied until he had gone into the building and had inspected every floor clear up to the attic, to see that the chimney and the building were not in danger. As it happened, the janitor had built a fire in the furnace in the basement for some reason, so that the young man's anxiety, fortunately, was unfounded. But I am heartily glad he had such an anxiety, and that he could not rest until he found out whether there was any foundation for it or not. I shall feel that all of our buildings are safer for his being here, and when he graduates and goes away, I hope he will leave many others here who will have the same sense of personal responsibility which he had. Let me tell you, here and now, that unless you young men and young women come to have this characteristic, your lives are going to fall far short of the best and noblest achievement possible. We frequently hear the word lucky used with reference to a man's life. Two boys start out in the world at the same time, having the same amount of education. When 20 years have passed, we find one of them wealthy and independent. We find him a successful professional man with an assured reputation, or perhaps at the head of a large commercial establishment employing many men, or perhaps a farmer owning and cultivating hundreds of acres of land. We find the second boy, grown now to be a man, working for perhaps $1 or $1.50 a day, and living from hand to mouth in a rented house. When we remember that the boys started out in life equal-handed, we may be tempted to remark that the first boy has been fortunate, that fortune has smiled on him, and that the second has been unfortunate. There is no such nonsense as that. When the first boy saw a thing that he knew he ought to do, he did it, and he kept rising from one position to another until he became independent. The second boy was an eye servant who was afraid that he would do more than he was paid to do. He was afraid that he would give 50 cents worth of labor for 25 cents. He watched the clock for fear that he would work 1 minute past 12 o'clock at noon and past 6 o'clock at night. He did not feel that he had any responsibility to look out for his employer's interests. The first boy did $1 worth of work for 50 cents. He was always ready to be at the store before time, and then, when the bell rang to stop work, he would go to his employer and ask him if there was not something more that ought to be done that night before he went home. It was this quality in the first boy that made him valuable and caused him to rise. Why should we call him fortunate or lucky? I think it would be much more suitable to say of him, he is responsible. Chapter 27. Getting on in the world. It is natural and praiseworthy for a person to be looking for a higher and better position than the one he occupies. So long as a man does his whole duty in what he is engaged in, he is not to be condemned for looking for something better to do. Now the question arises, how are you going to put yourself in a condition to be in demand for these higher and more important positions? In the first place, you should be continually on the lookout for opportunities to improve yourselves in your present work. You should be constantly on the lookout for chances to make yourselves more valuable to your present employer and more efficient in your work for him. Suppose you are engaged in the work of milking cows. I think it better to talk of practical things with which you all are acquainted, although I know that many of you boys had rather I would tell you how to go to Congress than how to become successful milkers. Inasmuch, though, as I suspect a good many more of us will have to milk cows than go to Congress, I think it will not hurt us to talk about milking. If the boy who milks cows now does that thoroughly, by doing it he may lay the foundation to go to Congress later. The point is that we want to be constantly on the lookout for ways of improving whatever work we are engaged in, whether that work be milking cows or doing something else. In whatever you are doing, there are a great many improvements which you want to become acquainted with. If your work is dairying, read the dairy journals. Get hold of every book or paper that you can which has anything to do with your line of work. Be sure that you know all, or as nearly as possible, all there is to know about milking cows. And then don't be content with what you get out of books and newspapers, for that information is only the result of some other person's experience. By conversing with intelligent and experienced persons, and by your own experiments, you can get much valuable information about your work. Never get to the point where you are ashamed to ask somebody else for information. The ignorant man will always be ignorant if he fears that by asking for information he will betray his lack of knowledge. Know all there is to be known about the position you occupy, but ever feel that there is more for you to learn. There is no person who makes himself of so little use in the world as the one who feels that he knows all there is to be known about his work. If you are milking cows, and feel that you know all there is to be known about that subject, you have simply reached a point where you are practically useless and unfitted for the work. Feel that you can always learn something from somebody else. It is a mark of intelligence to learn, even from the humblest person. I do not mean for you always to put into practice every suggestion that is made to you, or to agree with every statement made to you, but listen to what people say, weigh their plans alongside of your own, and then profit by the one which you are convinced is the best. Persevere in such conversation, and in reading. You will constantly be surprised to find how little you really know about your work, and how much more somebody else knows about it than you do. You want to get to the point where you can anticipate the wants of your employer. In this way, you will make yourself of great service to him. You do not know how vexing and discouraging it is to a man to be compelled to say every morning to those in his employ, "Do this at 9 o'clock, and that at 12 o'clock, and the other at 5. Or how pleasant it is to have a person with whom you come in contact anticipate the needs of the man who employs him. Then you can make yourself valuable and in demand, just in proportion as you consider that the work you are performing is your own. Do not consider that it is being performed for a certain man or a particular organization. Make haste, and get to the point where you can feel that everything connected with the shop in which you work, or in the office, or in the stable, is under your care, and that you alone are responsible for it. If you are at the head of a stable or barn, plan day by day how you can best provide for the well-being of your cows and horses. When you make yourself master of these humble positions, you will find that the calls to higher places will come to you. The men you see spending most of their times looking for higher and more lucrative positions are, 9 times out of 10, men who have made worthless failures in other places. Chapter 28. Each one his part. I desire to call your attention for a few minutes tonight to the fact that one thing is dependent for success upon another. One individual is dependent for success upon another. One family in a community upon other families for their mutual prosperity. One part of a state upon the other parts for the successful government of the state. The same thing is true in nature. One thing cannot exist unless another exists, cannot succeed without the success of something else. The very forces of nature are dependent upon other forces for their existence. Without vegetable life, we could not have animal life. Without mineral life, we could not have vegetable life. So, throughout all kinds of life, as throughout the life of nature, everything is dependent upon something else for its success. The same thing is true of this institution and of every institution. The success of the whole depends upon having every person connected with the institution do his or her whole duty. We are very apt to get the idea that there are high positions and that there are low positions, that there is important service and unimportant service. But I believe that God expects the same amount of conscientious work from a person in a low position as from one in a high position, that He expects the same conscientious service, whether the work be a big task or a little one. We are dependent as an institution, every institution is dependent, for success upon the individual consciences of those connected with it as teachers and students. And there is nothing that gives me more satisfaction and pleasure, and more faith in the future of the school, than to see examples of conscientious work here. I remember a special instance of this kind that occurred at one of our commencements. I believe that commencement, more than any other time in the school year, is an occasion where there is excitement and a desire to witness the exercises. After the exercises of that year were over, I had occasion to go to the dining room, and I found there one of the teachers who from her appearance I thought had not attended the exercises. When I asked her about this, she said, "No, I intended to go, but at the last minute I saw that there were some dishes here that needed to be washed, and I stayed here to see that they were washed." Now that was one of the finest exhibitions of conscientious regard for duty that I ever saw. And there are very few persons who would have done a thing like that. That we have teachers here whose hearts are so much in their work that they are willing to do such things as this, gives me great faith in the future of this school as the years go on. It takes a person with a conscience, when there are public men of note here, a great many strangers and many things to attract attention, to be so mindful of her duty that she will stay behind and wash dishes when everyone else is in attendance upon the exercises and seeking enjoyment. When the people connected with this institution can bring themselves up to that point, I have no fear for the success of the institution, and it can succeed only as they do bring their consciences up to that point. If I were to ask you individually as students to deliver an address upon this platform, or to read an essay, I should not be at all afraid that you would fail. I believe that you would carefully prepare that address or essay, You would look up all the references necessary in order to give you what information you needed, and then you would get up here and speak or read successfully. I feel sure that I would hear something that I should not be ashamed of. The average man and woman do succeed when before the public, but where I fear for your success is when you come to the performance of the small duties, the duties which you think no one else will know about, the things which no one will see you do. It is when you think that no one is going to see you washing dishes or getting dirt out of crevices that I am afraid you are going to fail. I remember that some time ago, when I was travelling in a buggy from one New England village to another, after we had gone some miles on our way, the young man who was driving me stopped the horse and got out. I asked him what was the matter, and he said that something was the matter with the harness. I looked with all the eyes I had, and yet I could see nothing at fault. Still, the man mended a piece of harness that he said was not as it should be. It had not seemed to me that this fault in the harness had been irritating the horse or hindering him from going so fast as he ought. But after it had been repaired, I could see a difference for the better. That, to my mind, was a great lesson. It taught me how the people of New England have educated their consciences, so that they cannot allow themselves to let even the smallest thing go undone, or be improperly done. It is this trait in the New England character that has come to make the very name itself of that part of the country a synonym for success. Don't we wish that we had 100 such men as that driver here? If I could put my hand on 1,000 such persons as that, we could find employment for all of them as soon as they got their diplomas. One learns to judge persons by their character in this respect. Not long ago I had an opportunity to go through the jail of this county. As the sheriff showed me through the building, I was impressed to see how clean everything was, and I noticed that the man who seemed to be the janitor of the jail, although he too was a prisoner, seemed to take a great deal of pride in showing me the cleanness of the corners and the general good appearance of the place. He seemed to put his whole heart into the keeping of that jail clean. "Who is that man?" I asked the sheriff, after we had got out of the janitor's hearing. "He is a prisoner," the sheriff replied, "but I believe he is innocent. I do not believe that a man can be so honest and faithful about his work and be guilty of a crime. When I see how well he does his work here, notwithstanding the fact that he is shut up here in prison, I believe that he is an honest man and deserves his freedom." In plain words, then, the problem we must work out here is not, can you master algebra or literature? We know you can do that. We know you can master the sciences. The general problem we have to work out here, and work it out with fear and trembling, is, can we educate the individual conscience? Can we so educate a group of students that there will be in every one of them a conscience on which we can depend? Can we educate a class of girls here who will not be satisfied, when sweeping their rooms, to make the middle of the rooms look clean, but leave a trail of dirt in the corners and under the furniture? Will they see to it that everything is properly cleaned and put in its appropriate place? Can we educate a class of young men who will do their duty on the farm as they would do it on this platform? Can we educate your consciences so that you will do certain things, not because it is the rule that they should be done, but because they should be done? These are the problems we must work out here. Chapter 29. What would father and mother say? I think there is no more important or more critical time in a person's life than when he or she leaves home for the first time, to enter school, or to go to work, or to go into business. I think that as a general thing you can judge pretty accurately what a person is going to amount to in life by the way he or she acts during the first year or two after leaving home. You will find, usually, that if a young man is able during this time to stand up against temptation, is able to practice the lessons that his father and mother have taught him, and instead of falling by the wayside, gains help and inspiration as he goes along from these lessons, he is almost sure to prove himself a valuable citizen, one who not only will be a help to his parents in their old age, but a help to the community in which he lives. There is no better way to test an act than to ask yourself the question, what would my father or my mother think of this? Would they approve, or should I be ashamed to let them know that I have done this thing? If you will ask yourselves these questions day by day, I think you will find that you will get a great deal of assistance from them in the shaping of your lives while you are here at school. I want you to put that question to yourselves with regard to deportment, because that is a thing on which we must lay emphasis. We can fill your heads with knowledge, and we can train your hands to work with skill. But unless all this training of head and hand is based upon high, upright character, upon a true heart, it will amount to nothing. You will be no better off than the most ignorant. Now, one of the ways in which young people are likely to go astray, especially when they first go away from home to school, is in yielding to a temptation to spend their time with persons who have mean and low dispositions, persons whom you would be ashamed to have your parents know that you kept company with. Avoid that. Be sure that the young men and women with whom you associate are persons who are able to raise you up, persons who will help to make you stronger in every way. I do not need to tell you, I am sure, of the consequences of association with persons who will have a bad influence upon you, or the results of a disregard of admonitions for good. A student who persistently keeps bad company, who breaks rules, who is constantly disobedient, who is repeatedly behind at roll call, who, time after time, has to be called up by the officer of the day, or watched in the dining room, or on the parade ground, is the student who in a few years is going to bring sorrow to the hearts of his parents. There is no getting away from that. Only today the mother of one of the students came here with a message from another mother, whose son had been sent here. She told me how this anxious mother had told her to impress upon her son the necessity of obeying every rule here, and how she wanted him to put in every moment in hard study and honest work. She wanted this woman to impress upon the man how hard his mother was struggling every day so that she could keep him here, and at the same time provide for the younger children of the family at home. Now, when this message was delivered, where was that boy? Was he doing as his mother was so earnestly praying him to do? No. He had already disgraced himself, and had been sent away from the institution. How much sorrow will he bring to his poor mother's heart when she knows? No wonder he was trying to conceal his misconduct and disgrace from her. Let me entreat you then, if you are inclined to fritter away the best hours of your lives, think how the news of your misconduct will act upon the hearts of your parents, those fathers and mothers whose every thought is of you. I have spoken of these as some of the things that we do not want to have you do at school. What are some of the things that we do want you to learn to do? We want to have you learn to see and appreciate the practical value of the religion of Christ. We hope to help you to see that religion, that Christianity is not something that is far off, something in the air, that it is not something to be enjoyed only after the breath has left the body. We want to have you see that the religion of Christ is a real and helpful thing, that it is something which you can take with you into your classrooms, into your shops, onto the farm, into your very sleeping rooms, and that you do not have to wait until tomorrow before you can find out about the power and helpfulness of Christ's religion. We want to have you feel that this religion is a part of your lives, and that it is meant to be a help to you from day to day. We hope to have you feel that the religious services that we have you attend here are not burdens, but that it is a privilege, greatly to be desired, to come to these meetings and into the prayer meetings of the various societies on the grounds, and there commune, not in a far-off imaginary way, but in a humble and intimate way, with the Spirit of Jesus. We want you to feel that religion is something to make you happier, brighter, and more hopeful, not something to make you go about with long, solemn faces. We want you to learn, if you do not already know, that in order to be Christ-like, one does not have to be unnatural. Then, we want to have you learn to govern your actions, not alone for the sake of the result which they will have upon yourself and those who are near and dear to you, but for the sake of your influence upon all with whom you will come in contact. Your life here will be largely wasted. I am tempted to say wholly wasted, if you failed to learn that higher, broader, and far more important lesson of your relations to your fellow students and to all the persons by whom you are going to be daily surrounded. Your life will be wasted if you go away from here and have not learned that the greatest lesson of all is the lesson of brotherly love, of usefulness, and of charity. I want to see young men who are here realizing this spirit to such an extent that they will rise in chapel and give their seats to students who are strangers at the school. I want to have you get to the point where you will go to the matron in the dining room and ask her permission to have some new student who has not had a chance to get acquainted take his meals at a seat beside you. Of the many noble traits exhibited by the late General Armstrong, none made a deeper impression upon me than his supreme unselfishness. I do not believe that I ever saw in all my association with General Armstrong anything in his life or actions which indicated in the slightest degree that he was selfish. He was interested not only in the black South, but in the white South, not only in his own school, but in all schools. Anything which he could do or say to benefit another institution seemed to give him as much pleasure as if he was speaking or acting directly for the benefit of Hampton Institute. I had a pleasant experience of this spirit of a desire to be helpful to others a little while ago, when I was visiting a certain theological seminary in Pennsylvania. I think I was never in such an atmosphere as during the 2 days I spent in that institution. I was surrounded by a crowd of young men whose sole object seemed to be to make me comfortable and happy. Most of these young men were far advanced in the study of theology and the sciences, and yet they were not above serving me, even to the extent of offering to black my boots. When I came away, several wished to carry my luggage to the station. This is the kind of thoughtfulness we want to have in every corner of this institution. Get hold of the spirit of wanting to help somebody else. Seek every opportunity possible to make somebody happy and comfortable. Do all this, and you will find that the years will not be many before we will have one of the best institutions on the face of the globe, and that you, in helping to make it such, have been doing these things that, when you ask yourselves, "What would father and mother say about my doing this?" will enable you to answer the question with pride and satisfaction. Chapter 30. Object Lessons. Not long ago, an old colored man living in this state said to me, "I's done quit livin' in dashers. "I's got my second freedom." That remark meant, in this case, that that old man by economy, hard work and proper guidance, after 20 years of struggle, had freed himself from debt, had paid for 50 acres of land, had built a comfortable house, and was a taxpayer. It meant that his 2 sons had been educated in academic and agricultural branches, that his daughter had received mental training in connection with lessons in sewing and cooking. Within certain limitations, here was a Christian American home, the result of industrial effort and philanthropy. This Negro had been given a chance to get upon his feet. That is all that any Negro in America asks. That is all that you in this school ask. What position in state, in letters, or in commerce and in business the offspring of that man is to occupy must be left to the future and the capacity of the race. What position you are to occupy must be left to your future and to your capacity. During the days of slavery, we were shielded from competition. Today, unless we prepare ourselves to compete with the world, we must go to the wall as a race. If I were to go into certain communities in the United States and say that the German is ignorant, I should be pointed to the best paying truck farm in that neighborhood, owned and operated by a German. If I said that the German is without skill, I should be shown the largest machine shop in the city, owned and operated by a German. If I said the German is lazy, I should be shown the largest and finest residence on the most fashionable avenue, built from the savings of a German who began life in poverty. If I said that the German could not be trusted, I should be introduced to a man of that race who is the president of the largest bank in the city. If I said that the German is not fitted for citizenship, I should be shown a German who is a respected and influential member of the city government. Now, when your critics say that the Negro is lazy, I want you to be able to show them the finest farm in the community, owned and operated by a Negro. When they ask if the Negro is honest, I want you to show them a Negro whose note is acceptable at the bank for $5,000. When they say that the Negro is not economical, I want you to show them a Negro with $50,000 in the bank. When they say that the Negro is not fit for citizenship, I want you to show them a man of our race paying taxes on a cotton factory. I want you to be able to show them Negroes who stand in the front in the affairs of state, of religion, of education, of mechanics, of commerce, and of household economy. You remember the old admonition, "By this sign we shall conquer." Let it be our motto. There are people in the North who have been aiding in the matter of Negro education in the South during the last 10, 20, or even 30 years. It is in part the money of those people that has made this institution possible. Those people have a right, as a plain matter of business, to ask, what are the results of this aid they have been giving? What evidences can we present to prove to them that their investments in this direction have been paying ones? It is, in no small measure, the duty of you, as students of Tuskegee Institute, to answer, and to answer satisfactorily, such a question as that. We have reached a point, largely through the aid which the North has given to the South during the last 30 years, where there is little opposition in the South to the people of the Negro race receiving any form of education. You can go out from here and plant a school in any county in the South, which will not meet with opposition from the white residents of the community. What is more, in many cases it will receive encouragement, and in some a hearty sympathy and support. Not long ago I received $50 from a white man in Mississippi to pay for the education of a black boy. This man was formerly a slaveholder, and at first he was not inclined to encourage the education of the Negro, but he stated to me frankly in his letter that he now believes that Tuskegee and similar institutions are doing the work that the Negro most needs to have done. He wanted to show the people of the North, he said, that Southern white men are as deeply interested in the development of the Negro as they are. I have in mind another case of a Southern white man in Alabama who during the last year contributed out of his own pocket nearly $2,000 for the building and maintenance of a Negro school in his county. Still another Southern man, Mr. Belton Gilreath of Birmingham, Alabama, recently sent the Institute his check for $500, up to that time the largest sum which the school had received from a Southern man, with this letter: "As a Southern man and the son of one of the largest slave owners of the South, I am anxious for our people to do all that can reasonably be expected of them for the education of the Negroes, thereby making them more content and useful citizens and friends. Furthermore, I think the time has come in the South for all our people to consider more fully than they have ever done before the question of the education of all of our population, and, wherever practicable, to give attention in our schools to teaching the art of saving also." More recently still, Mr. H. M. Atkinson of Atlanta, one of the most successful businessmen in the entire South, came to Tuskegee Institute and made a thorough inspection of our work. After he returned to Atlanta, I received a letter from him, from which I quote one paragraph: "I enclose my check for $1,000 for the benefit of your school, to be used as your judgment dictates. I was very much impressed by what I saw. I will not forget it." These white people are beginning to see the difference between the value of an educated Negro and one who is not educated. It is for you to demonstrate to them this value more and more clearly every year. Chapter 31. Substance versus Shadow. You are here for the purpose of getting an education. Now, one of the results of an education is to increase a person's wants. You take the ordinary person who lives on a plantation, and so long as that person is ignorant, he is content to live in a cabin with one room, in which he has a skillet, a bedstead, or an apology for one, a table, and a few chairs or stools. He is content if he has fat meat, cornbread, and peas on the table to eat, and for clothing he is satisfied to wear jeans and Osnaburg himself, and to have his wife wear a calico dress and a 25-cent hat. But as soon as that man becomes educated, he feels that he must have a house with at least 2 or 3 rooms in it, furnished with neat and substantial furniture. Instead of jeans and Osnaburg for clothes, he wants decent woolen cloth, neat-fitting shoes, and a white collar and a necktie, things which he never thought of wearing before he became educated. Sometimes he even thinks that he must have jewelry. So you see, the result of education is to increase a person's wants. Now, the crisis in that person's affairs comes when the question arises whether his education has increased his ability to supply his wants. Such ability, I claim, is one of the results of industrial education. But such an education as that, while we are getting culture along all the lines that in any degree tend to increase the wants of a person, we are in the meantime getting skill to increase our ability to supply these wants. And unless we have this ability, we will find, sooner or later, that instead of going forward, we are going backward. I think that the temptation for us, especially for those who are only half educated, is to try to get hold of a certain kind of shallow culture, instead of getting hold of real education, of property and material prosperity. You who study history know how the Pilgrim Fathers, who landed at Plymouth Rock in the bleak winter of 1620, were willing to wear homespun clothes, and to be married in them, if necessary, and to have a wedding that in all would not cost more than $4, I suppose. On the other hand, when one of our boys wants to get married now, he must have a wedding that costs not less than $150. His wife must have a dress with a long train, and he must have a Prince Albert broadcloth coat that he either rents or buys on the installment plan. They think that they must have a bevy of waiting bridesmaids, and there must be a line of hacks standing on the outside of the church door that will cost him not less than $25. Then, after the ceremony, where do these people go to live? The chances are the young man who has been to all this expense for the sake of the show of it takes his bride to live in a small cabin with only 2 rooms, sometimes only 1 room, rented at that. This is what I mean by getting the superficial culture before the dollars are made, grasping at the shadow instead of the substance. Now what we want to do here is to send out a set of young men and young women who will go into the communities where such mistakes as these are made, and show the people by example and by work how much better it is to get married for $4 and to pay as you go, than to get married for $150 and then pay $4 a month to live in a rented cabin. When I go to New York or to any large city, there is nothing more discouraging than to see people of this very class I am speaking of, people who seek the superficial culture, the shadow, rather than the substantial dollars and education. If you stand for a few minutes on any of the fashionable streets in the northern cities, you will see these elaborately dressed men, wearing $5 hats on heads that at most are not worth more than 50 cents. This is the class of people who have got just enough education to make them want everything they see, but who have not got enough to make them able to get what they want, unless they go beyond their means to do so. A superficial education, too, makes us inclined to seek show in other things besides dress. We are inclined, for one thing, to seek to show off in the use of titles. I remember that once I was introduced to a company of about 60 men, and out of the whole number there were only 6 who were not doctors, professors, or colonels, or who did not have some title. I must say I thought more of the 6 who were just plain misters than I did of all the rest, for among the others there were some very hard-looking doctors and professors. An over-desire for these things shows a shallowness in us which makes us ridiculous. We want to stop making that kind of mistake. If you are a mister, encourage the people to call you by that name. If you are a minister and preach interesting and instructive sermons, people are going to be impressed by what you say, and not by the title you bear. The title is the shadow. What you say is the substance. When a person is simple, he is on the strong side. People not only have more respect for him, but he accomplishes more. I was once at a memorial meeting held in honor of a man who had done a great and useful work, not only for the race, but for the school with which he had been connected. After about 2 hours of speech-making, somebody took the platform and said that a collection ought to be taken up for the benefit of the school which this man had worked so hard for, to show the appreciation which those present felt for this man's service. After a good deal of talk, $6.65 was collected. Then the question was raised again as to what was going to be done with this money, just how it was to be donated. to the school. The meeting had passed a set of resolutions testifying to the high character of the man and the worth of his work. Somebody suggested that these resolutions be engrossed and sent to the school. This was a big word, and the people liked the sound of it. Upon inquiry, it was found that it would cost $6 to have the resolutions engrossed. It was voted to have this done, and it was done, when the resolutions would have done just as much good typewritten at a cost of 25 cents. But the meeting paid out the $6 and sent the engrossed copy of the resolutions down to the school, along with the 65 cents left to be expended for the help of the school. That, it seems, was another case of grasping the shadow instead of the substance. The engrossed resolutions were the shadow. The 65 cents were all that was left of the substance. In all these matters, we need speedy and effective reforms. We want you to go out into the world and use your influence towards securing these reforms. There are too many people in the world who would give their whole lives to grasping at the shadow instead of the substance, grasping at a sham instead of real worth. We want you to teach by word and action simple, right, and honest living. End of chapter 31. Substance versus shadow. Chapter 32. Character as shown in dress. It is surprising how much we can tell about a person's character by his dress. I think it is very seldom that we cannot tell whether a person is ignorant or educated, simply by his dress. And there are some few plain facts about dress that I am going to mention to you tonight. While it is hard to lay down any rules as to how we must dress, I think there are some well-defined principles of dress to which all well-educated persons will conform. I think we will all agree that our dress should be clean. There is little excuse for persons wearing filthy clothes. I think we all will agree as to that. It is disgraceful for a man to go about with ragged clothes, or with clothes fastened together with pins where buttons ought to be. It is disgraceful for a girl to go about with a soiled apron, or with her clothes pinned together. Our clothes should be kept clean and in good repair. Thus far, I think, we shall have no disagreement. But there are some people who make the mistake of giving their whole mind to the subject of dress. From the very beginning of the week, you will find that a great part of their thought and attention is given to planning what they are going to wear the next Sunday. Some people will go in rags all through the week, in order to have something showy to wear on Sunday. I think we should respect Sunday by putting on something different from what we wear during the week, if we can. Although, of course, these things are largely governed by our station in life. But even then, it certainly is inappropriate to wear our most showy clothes on that day. Dress in the way that your pocket will allow. There are some persons who not only employ all their thoughts in considering what they shall wear, but also spend all their money on their clothes. There are some persons who live for the sake of dress. These persons are usually denominated fops. I think the people in the northern cities are the worst in this respect. If you go through 6th Avenue in New York or Cambridge Street in Boston, you will see many of these fops, who perhaps earn about $20 a month, standing on the street corners with kid gloves on, cigars between their lips, and high hats. Now that kind of a person is a foolish fop, and one whom we do not care to have in this institution. There is no more foolish person than the one who spends all he makes, and sometimes more, on dress. Then, too, I think there are persons who make mistakes in the matter of ornaments, what we call jewellery. You will find many a man whose income is not $20 a month, wearing a great brass watch chain with so much brass in it that you can almost smell it. You will see men and women with 3 or 4 brass finger rings, or women with brass earrings. Do you know that one of the most common mistakes among the masses of our people in the country is throwing away their money on cheap jewelry? Do you know that they will come into town to the stores and spend their money on jewelry worth about 10 cents a piece, jewelry that you actually can get for $6, and a bushel $7 at wholesale? Our people spend thousands of dollars every year for this cheap jewelry. If there is a young man or a young woman here who likes jewelry and is going to indulge in it, be sure to get that which is modest. Another mistake that some of our people make is in wearing flashy or loud dressy clothing, dress in which bright colors and red ribbons predominate. Our dress should be modest, with few colors. We often make a mistake in getting shoes about 2 sizes too small. I saw a girl this morning in perfect misery, simply because she had bought and was trying to wear a pair of shoes about 2 sizes too small. Such people simply punish their feet to make people think they have small feet, though it is just as honorable to have a large foot as a small one. There is no difference. Then we make another mistake in buying cheap, showy shoes simply because they have a gloss on them. Such shoes are made to attract attention, and not for comfort or durability. When you are spending your money for shoes, be sure that you get something good, something that will last you. Do not buy those worthless things which, when they come in contact with water, will shrivel up, because they are made of cheap material. A man cannot respect a girl who punishes her feet in order to make them look small. Then another thing. Some of us think we can improve our color. Some get flour, and others get other kinds of mixtures, which are called face powders. There is no use for this. Any man will lose respect for a girl who abuses herself in this way. Only get something into your head, and then you will find that these matters of dress will adjust themselves. While some of you do not dress so well as you might, yet, if you will give the contents of your heads the proper attention, you will find that the matter of dress will not trouble you. You can get dresses and clothes after you have secured your education. But now is the only time that you have in which to secure the education. Chapter 33. Sing the Old Songs. There is no part of our chapel exercises that gives me more pleasure than the beautiful Negro melodies which you sing. I believe there is no part of the service more truly spiritual, more elevating. Wherever you go, after you leave this school, I hope that you will never give up the singing of these songs. If you go out to have schools of your own, have your pupils sing them as you have sung them here, and teach them to see the beauty which dwells in these songs. When in New York, not long ago, I had the pleasure of conversing with Prince Henry of Prussia. He spoke particularly of the beauty of these songs, and said that in his own home in Germany, he and his family often sing them. He asked if there was any printed collection of these songs, that a copy might be sent him, and I have since then forwarded to him a copy of the Book of Plantation Melodies, collected and published under the auspices of Hampton Institute. When Christ was upon this earth, he said, "A little child shall lead them." Whence comes this supreme power of leadership? In this age, when we hear so much said about leaders of men, about successful leadership, we do well to stop to consider this admonition of the Saviour. Some are said to lead in business, others in education, others in politics or in religion. What is the explanation of "a little child shall lead them"? Simply this: a little child, under all circumstances, is its simple, pure, sweet self, never appearing big when it is little, never appearing learned when it is ignorant, never appearing wealthy when it is in poverty, never appearing important when it is unimportant. In a word, the life of the child is founded upon the great and immutable, and yet simple, tender, and delicate laws of nature. There is no pretense, there is no mockery. There is an unconscious, beautiful, strong clinging to truth. And it is this divine quality, in child or in man, in Jew or Gentile, in Christian or Mohammedan, in the ancient world or in the modern world, in a black man or in a white man, that always has led men and moulded their activity. The men who have been brave enough, wise enough, simple enough, self-denying enough to plant themselves upon this rock of truth and there stand, have, in the end, drawn the world unto them, even as Christ said, I will draw all men unto me. Such a man was Luther. Such a man was Wesley. Such a man was Carlyle. Such a man was Cromwell. Such were Garrison and Phillips. Such was Abraham Lincoln. And such was our own great Frederick Douglass. The thing aimed at by all great souls has been to bring men and races back to the simplicity and purity of childhood, back to reality. What is the most original product with which the Negro race stands accredited? Yes, I am almost ready to add, with which America stands accredited. Without hesitation I answer, those beautiful, weird, quaint, sweet melodies which were the simple, childlike expression of the anguish, the joy, the hopes, the burdens, the faith, the trials of our forefathers, who were the yoke of slavery. Why are they the admiration of the world? Why does every attempt at improvement spoil them? Why do they never fail to touch the tenderest chord, to bring tears from the eyes of rich and poor, from king and humblest toiler alike? Listen how in this beautiful song the soul in trouble is told not to go to houses and temples made by man, but to get close to nature. If you want to see Jesus, go in the wilderness, go in the wilderness, go in the wilderness, go in the wilderness. If you want to see Jesus, go in the wilderness, leaning on the Lord. Oh, brother, how do you feel when you come out of the wilderness? Come out the wilderness. Come out the wilderness. Oh, brother, how do you feel when you come out the wilderness, leaning on the Lord? Then, in another, hear how our foreparents broke through all the deceptions and allurements of false wealth, and in their long days of weariness, expressed their faith in a place where every day would be one of rest. Oh, religion is a fortune. I really do believe. Oh, religion is a fortune. I really do believe. Oh, religion is a fortune. I really do believe. Where Sabbaths have no end. Where you been, poor mourner? Where you been so long? Been down in the valley for to pray, and I ain't done praying yet. Then how, when oppressed by years of servitude to which others thought there would be no end, we hear them break out into quaint and wild bursts of appeal to fact. My Lord delivered Daniel, my Lord delivered Daniel, my Lord delivered Daniel, why can't he deliver me? I met Pilgrim on the way, and I asked him where he's going. I'm bound for Canaan's happy land, and this is the shouting band. Go on. He delivered Daniel from the lion's den, Jonah from the belly of the whale, and the Hebrew children from the fiery furnace. Then why not every man? Or, when the burden seemed almost too great for human body to endure, there came this simple, childlike prayer: O Lord, oh my good Lord, keep me from sinking down. O Lord, oh my good Lord, keep me from sinking down. I tell you what I mean to do, keep me from sinking down. I mean to go to heaven too, keep me from sinking down. Or what could go more directly to nature's heart than the pathetic, yet hopeful, trustful outburst of the little slave boy who was to be taken from his mother to be sold into the far South, when it seemed to him that all earthly happiness was forever blighted. Hear him. I'm gwine to join the great association. I'm gwine to join the great association. I'm gwine to join the great association. Then my little soul's going to shine, shine. Then my little soul's going to shine along. Oh, I'm going to climb up Jacob's ladder. Then my little soul's going to shine, shine. Then my little soul's going to shine along. Oh, I'm going to climb up higher and higher. Then my little soul's going to, etc. I'm going to sit at the welcome table. I'm going to feast off milk and honey. I'm going to tell God how He saved me. Then my little soul's going to shine, shine. Then my little soul's going to shine along. Oh! And so it has ever been. So it is, and ever will be. The world, regardless of race, or colour, or condition, admires and approves a real thing. But sham, buffoonery, mere imitation, mere superficiality, never has brought success and never will bring it. An individual or a race that is strong enough, is wise enough, to disregard makeshifts, customs, prejudices, alluring temptations, deceptions, imitations, to throw off the mask of unreality and plant itself deep down in the clay, or on the solid granite of nature, is the individual or the race that will crawl up, struggle up, yes, even burst up, and in the effort of doing so will gain a strength that will command for it respect and recognition. Before an individual or a race thus equipped, race prejudice, senseless customs, oppressions, will hide their faces forever in blushing shame. Chapter 34. Getting Down to Mother Earth. One of the highest ambitions of every man leaving Tuskegee Institute should be to help the people of his race find bottom, find bedrock, and then help them to stand upon that foundation. If we, who are interested in the school, can help you to do this, we shall count ourselves satisfied. And until the bedrock of our life is found, and until we are planted thereon, all else is but plaster, but make-believe, but the paper on the walls of a house without framework. That is one of the stepping stones with which nature has provided us. Here the path is plain, if we have the courage to follow it. 85% of the people of the Negro race live, or attempt to live, by some form of agriculture. If we would save the race and lift it up, here is the great opportunity around which, in a large measure, individual, organized, religious and secular effort should center for the next 50 years. But to do this, we must take advantage of the forces at hand. We must stand upon our own feet, and not upon a foundation supplied by another. We must begin our growth where our civilization finds us, and not try to begin on some other civilization. To illustrate what I mean, we need not go to another race, nor very far from home. In a little town in Alabama, there was a sturdy, industrious black man who for nearly 20 years had lived upon rented land, had hired mules and horses to work that land, and had mortgaged his crops to secure food and clothes. He had driven to church on Sunday in a buggy that was not his, and he wore good-looking clothes that were not paid for. In outward appearance he seemed to prosper. He seemed to be what the white men about him were. But this black man knew that he was trying to stand upon an imperfect basis. And so, one day, about a dozen years ago, he made up his mind that henceforth he would be himself, that he would stand upon his own foundation. He told the white man to take back his mules, to take back his wagon and buggy, and he gave up the rented land. He had resolved to be a man. A few acres of land were secured. He made his bed in the cottonseed at night. He hired a boy to come to his place at night, and by moonlight he pulled a plough which the boy guided. In this way a cotton crop was made free from debt. With the small surplus which he got from this, he bought an ox, and with this beast made a second crop free from debt. A mule was bought, and then another. Today, this man is the owner of a comfortable home, is a stockholder in one of the banks of his county, and his note or check will be honored by any business house there. While others were talking or debating over second-hand doctrines learned by rote, this strong son of nature had found himself and solved his own problem. I might tell you the story of another man of our race, who began his successful business life in the hollow of a tree for his home, without furniture or bed clothing. But that tree, and the land on which it stood, were his own. You had better begin life in a hollow tree and be a man, than begin it in a rented house and be a mere tool, imitation of a man. If you were to go into the western part of this country, you would find it filled with men of the highest culture, profound scholarship, and enduring wealth, whose ancestors a few generations ago began life in a dugout, in a hay loft, or in a hole in the side of a mountain. Young men and young women, there is no escape. If we would be great and good and useful, we must pay the price. And remember that when we get down to the fundamental principles of truth, nature draws no color line. I do not want to startle you when I say it, but I should like to see during the next 50 years every colored minister and teacher whose work lies outside the large cities, armed with a thorough knowledge of theoretical and practical agriculture, in connection with his theological and academic training. This, I believe, should be so, because the race is an agricultural one, and because my hope is that it will remain such. Upon this foundation almost every race in history has got its start. With cheap lands, a beautiful climate, and a rich soil, we can lay the foundation of a great and powerful race. The question that confronts us is whether we will take advantage of this opportunity. In a recent number of the New York Independent, Reverend Russell H. Conwell, the pastor of the great Temple Baptist Church in Philadelphia, a church that has a membership of 3,000 persons, tells of the pastor of a small country church in Massachusetts, who, in perplexity at the eternally recurring question of how to make his church pay its expenses, asked Mr. Conwell's advice. I advised him, Mr. Conwell says, to study agricultural chemistry, dairy farming, and household economy. I meant the advice seriously, and he took it seriously. He made his studies, and he made them thoroughly. On the Sunday when he preached his first practical sermon, which was the outgrowth of his helpful learning, its topic was scientific manures, with appropriate scriptural allusions. He had just 17 listeners. These 17, however, were greatly interested. Later on, they discussed the remarkable departure with their friends who had not attended the service. The result was that within 5 Sundays the church was packed with worshippers, who had discovered that heaven is not such a long distance from earth after all. In the present condition of our race, what an immense gain it would be if from every church in the vast agricultural region of the South there could be preached every Sunday 2 sermons on religion, and a lesson or lecture given on the principles of intelligent agriculture, on the importance of the ownership of land, and on the importance of building comfortable homes. I believe that if this policy could be pursued, instead of the now too often poorly clothed, poorly fed, and poorly housed ministers, with salaries ranging from $100 to $300 a year, we should soon have communities and churches on their feet to such an extent that hundreds of ministers who now live at a dying race would be supported in a manner commensurate with the dignity of the profession. Not only this, but such a policy would result in giving the ministry such an ideal of the dignity of labour and such a love for it that the minister's own home and garden and farm would be constant object lessons for his followers, and at the same time sources from which he could draw support, which would make him in a large measure independent. One of the most successful and most honoured ministers I know is a man who owns and cultivates 50 acres of land. This land yields him an income sufficient to live on each year. This man's note or cheque is gladly honoured at the bank. Because of his independence, he leads his people instead of having to cater to their whims. It may be suggested that what I plead for has not been done by others after this fashion. It was done in the early years of the settlement of New England, and persevered in by the ministers there until the people of the country had become sufficiently prosperous to support their ministers suitably. Besides, if one race of people, or one individual, is simply to follow in the steps of another, no progress would ever be possible in the world. Let us remember that no other race of people ever had such a problem to work out as we have. What I have tried to say to you tonight about agricultural life may be said with equal emphasis about city occupations. Show me the race that leads in work, in wood and in metal, in the building of houses and factories, and in the constructing and operating of machinery, and I will show you the race that in the long run moulds public thought, that controls government, that leads in commerce, in the sciences, in the arts, and in the professions. What we should do in all our schools is to turn out fewer job seekers and more job makers. Anyone can seek a job, but it requires a person of rare ability to create a job. If it may seem to some of you that what I have been saying overlooks the development of the race in morals, ethics, religion, and statesmanship, my answer would be this. You might as well argue that because a tree is planted deep down in Mother Earth, because it comes in contact with clay and rocks and sand and water, that through its graceful branches, its beautiful leaves, and its fragrant blossoms, it teaches no lesson of truth, beauty, and divinity. You cannot plant a tree in air and have it live. Try it. No matter how much we may praise its proportions and enjoy its beauty, it dies unless its roots and fibers touch and have their foundation in Mother Earth. What is true of the tree is true of a race. Chapter 35. A penny saved. A large proportion of you, for one reason or another, will not be able to return to this institution after the close of the present year. On that account, there are some central thoughts which I should like to impress upon your minds this evening, and which I wish you to take with you into the world, whether you go out from the school as graduates, or whether you go as undergraduates. I have often spoken to you about the matter of learning to economize your time, to save your time, the matter of trying to make the most of every minute and hour of your existence. And I have often spoke to you about the hurtful reputation which a large proportion of the people of our race get in one way or another because of this seeming inability to put a proper value upon time, or a proper value upon the importance of keeping one's word in connection with obligations. You know to what a large extent the feeling prevails, whether justly or unjustly, that as a people we cannot be depended upon to keep our word, that if we are hired to work in a mill or a factory, we work until we have got $3 or $4 in wages ahead, and then go on an excursion, or go to town, and do not return to work until what we have earned has been consumed. And so in one way or another, a large proportion of us get the reputation that we cannot be depended upon for faithful, regular, efficient service, and that hurts the race. Wherever you go, we wish you by your own actions, by your advice, by your influence, to try and disprove and counteract that hurtful reputation. You can do this in the most efficient manner by yourselves being the highest possible example. The people who succeed are, very largely, those who learn to economize time in the ways I have referred to, and those who also have learned to save not only time, but money. Now this may seem to you a very materialistic thought for me to emphasize this evening, the saving of money. But to us, as a race, it is of vital importance. I have heard it expressed recently, on several occasions, that the Negro was becoming too much materialized, too much industrialized. Too much attention, it has been said, is given to the material side of life. Now it seems to me that I have as yet seen very little that need arouse our fears in that direction. I am not able to understand how a race that does not own a single steam railroad, that does not own a single streetcar line, that owns hardly a bank, that does not own a single block of houses in a large city, I am not able to understand how such a race as this is in danger of becoming materialized. When you get millions of dollars in banks, when you get millions of dollars invested in railroad stocks, when you get other millions invested in streetcar lines, or in the control of large factories, great plantations, or in other great industrial enterprises in the South, then I shall say that there are signs of your becoming too materialistic, of your getting to be too rich. But I do not see any such signs yet. And until we do see such signs, we can rest ourselves in peace, I think, so far as that danger is concerned. But there is a certain influence of money that I do not think we emphasize enough. In the first place, the getting hold of money, the getting hold of a competency, ensures us the possession of certain influences that we can get in no other way. In order to get hold of the spiritually best and highest things in life, there are certain material things that we are compelled to have first. In the first place, the getting hold of money and the saving of this money will assure the possession of decent, comfortable houses to live in. No person can do his best work, or can be of the greatest service to himself and to his fellow beings, until he is able to live in a decent, comfortable house. You will not be ready for life until you own such a house, whether you live in it or not. Even if you own such a house and rent it out, you are that much more of a man. I often hear people say that they do not own a house, or property because they do not expect to live long in this place or that place. I have known such people to move 6 times in 6 years. They never will own a house, simply because they have got into the habit of giving excuses instead of trying to get to own a home. The possession of a decent house ensures us a certain amount of proper comfort. No person can do the best work, can think well, can get along well, unless he has a certain amount of comfort, and, I may add, a certain amount of good, nourishing food, well cooked. The person who is not sure where he is going to get his breakfast, or the one who is not sure where he is going to get the money to pay his next week's board, is the individual who cannot do the best work, whether the work be physical, mental, or spiritual. The possession of money enables us to be sure that we are going to have comfortable clothing enough to keep the body warm and vigorous and in good, healthy condition. The possession of money enables us to get to the point where we can do our part in the building of schoolhouses, churches, hospitals. It enables us to do our part in all these directions. Money not only enables us to get upon our feet in these material directions, but it has another value. The getting of it develops foresight on our part. People cannot get money without learning to exercise forethought, without planning today for tomorrow, this week for the next week, and this year for the next year. People cannot get hold of money, or at least cannot keep hold of it, who have not learned to exercise self-control. They must be able to say no. I want you students, when you go out from here, to be able to say no. I want you to be able to go by a store and, as you notice the things in that store, whether candy or spring hats, or whatever it is that attracts you, to be able, notwithstanding the fact that you have the money in your pockets to buy, to exercise a self-control that will enable you to pass these things by and save your money, to invest it in a home. Persons cannot get hold of money without learning to exercise economy, without learning to make everything go just as far as it is possible to make it go. Then again, the getting of money enables a person to become a good, steady, safe citizen. The people who kill and are killed, 9 times out of 10, whether they are black or white, are people who do not own a home, who do not have money in the bank. They are people who live in their gripsacks. They are gripsack leaders. If their gripsacks are in Montgomery tonight, there is their home. If they are in Opelika the next night, there is their home that night. There are numbers of these people who have no home except their gripsacks. Now, I don't want you to go out from here to be that kind of men and women. I want to see you own land. I want to see you own a decent home. And let me say right here that your home is not decent or complete until it contains a good, comfortable bathtub. Of the two, I believe I would rather see you own a bathtub without a house than a house without a bathtub. If you get the tub, you are sure to get the house later. So when you go out from here, buy a bathtub, even if you cannot afford to buy anything else. The possession of money, the having of a bank account, even if small, gives us a certain amount of self-respect. An individual who has a bank account walks through a street so much more erect. He looks people in the face. The people in the community in which he lives have a confidence in him and a respect for him, which they would not have if he did not possess the bank account. Now, one great mistake that we make in striving to reach these things is that we keep putting off beginning. The young man says that he will begin when he gets married. The young woman says that she will begin when she gets dressed well enough, or gets a little further on in life. yielding to this temptation or to that, they keep putting off beginning to save. It makes one sick at heart, as he goes into the cities, to see young men on Sunday afternoons paying $2 or $3 for a hack or carriage to take young women out to drive, when in too many cases the men do not earn a salary of more than $4 a week. Young women don't go driving with such men. A man who goes driving on a salary of $4 a week cannot own a home or possess a bank account. When you are asked to go to drive by such a man as that, tell him you would rather he put his money in the bank, because you know he is not able to afford to spend it in that way. I like to see people comfortably dressed and neatly dressed, but there is no sadder sight than to see young men and women yielding to the temptation to spend all they earn upon clothes. Then, when they die, in many, many cases, somebody has to pass around a hat to take up a collection in order that they may be decently put away. Do not make that mistake. Resolve that no matter how little you may earn, you will put a part of the money in the bank. If you earn $5 a week, put $2 in the bank. If you earn $10, save 4 of them. Put the money in the bank. Let it stay there. When it begins to draw interest, you will find that you will appreciate the value of money. A little while ago I was in the city of New Bedford, the city which was formerly the home of Mrs. Hetty Green, who is said to be the richest woman in the world. I want to tell you a story about her that was told me by a gentleman who lived in New Bedford, and who knew Mrs. Green when she lived there. For many years they had in New Bedford no savings bank that would take a very small deposit. Finally, a 5-cent savings bank was opened there. Just after this had been done, Mrs. Green told this gentleman that she was glad they had opened a 5-cent bank, so that now she would be able to put that amount in and have it draw interest. You who are here do not think about 5 cents as a sum to be saved. You think of it only as money to buy peanuts and candy, or cheap ribbons, or cheap jewelry. On last Sunday evening, I was in the home of a gentleman in New York who has in his family a girl who is now only 18 years old, and who, when she came to this country a few years ago and went to work in this family as a maid, could not speak a word of English. This girl now has $1,500 in the bank. Think of it! A young woman coming to this country poor and unable to speak a word of English has saved in a short time $1,500. I wonder how many of you, 5 years from now, will have $1,500 in the bank or in some other safe kind of property. The civilization of New England and of other such prosperous regions rests more, perhaps, upon the savings banks of the country than upon any other one thing. You ask where the wealth of New England is. It is not in the hands of millionaires. It is in the hands of individuals who have a few hundreds or a few thousands of dollars put safely away in some bank or banks. You will find that the savings banks of New England and of all countries that are prosperous are filled with the dollars of poor people, dollars aggregating millions in all. We cannot get upon our feet as a people until we learn the saving habit, until we learn to save every nickel, every dime, and every dollar that we can spare. Chapter 36. Growth. I want to impress upon you this evening the importance of continued growth. I very much wish that each one of you might imagine this evening your father and your mother to be looking at you and examining into every act of your life while here. I wish that you might feel, as it were, their very heart throbs. I wish that you might realize, perhaps as you have never realized before, how anxious they are that you should succeed here. I wish that you could know how many prayers they send up day after day, that your school life may be more and more successful as one day succeeds another, that you may grow to be successful, studious, strong men and women who will reflect credit upon yourselves and honor upon your families. Each one of you must have had some thoughts about those who are anxious about you, some thought for those persons whose hearts are very often bowed down in anxiety because they fear your school life here will not be useful, not only for your own sake, but for the sake of those who are near and dear to you, those who have done more for you than anybody else. I want you to make up your minds that this year is going to be the best one of your lives. I want you to resolve that you are going to put into this year the hardest and the most earnest work that you have ever done in your life, to resolve that this is going to be the greatest, the most courageous, and the most sinless year of life that you have ever lived. I want you to make up your minds to do this, to decide that you are going to continually grow, and grow more tomorrow than today. There are but two directions in this life in which you can grow, backward or forward. You can grow stronger or you can grow weaker. You can grow greater or smaller, but it will be impossible for you to stand still. Now, in regard to your studies, your lessons, I want you to make up your minds that you are going to be more and more thorough in your lessons each day you remain here, that you are going to so discipline yourselves that each morning will find you in the recitation rooms with your lessons more thoroughly and more conscientiously prepared for the day's work than they were for the work of the day before. I want you to make up your minds that you are going to be more nearly perfect, are going to put more manly and womanly strength into the preparation of your lessons each day, that you may be more useful. Then you will find yourselves wanting to grow, I hope. You will find yourselves learning the dignity of labour, and that no class of people can get up and stay up, can be strong and useful and respected, until they learn that there is no disgrace in any form of labour. I hope you are learning that labour with the hand, in any form whatever, is not disgraceful. I hope that you are learning, day by day, that all kinds of labour, whether with the mind or with the hand, are honourable, and that people only disgrace themselves by being and keeping in idleness. I want you to go forward by thoroughness in your work, by being more conscientious in your work, by loving your work more today than you did yesterday. If you are not growing in these respects, that is, if you are not going forward, you are going backward, and are not answering the purpose for which this institution was established, are not answering the purpose for which your parents sent you here. I want to emphasize the fact that we want you to grow in the direction of character, to grow stronger each day in the matter of character. When I say character here, I mean to use the word in its broadest sense. The institution wants to find you growing more polite to your fellows every day, as you come in contact with them, whether it be in the classroom, in the shop, in the field, in the dining room, or in your bedroom. No matter where you are, I want you to find yourselves growing more polite and gentlemanly. Notice I do not say merely that I want your teachers, those who are over you, to find you growing more polite. I want you to find yourselves so. If you are not doing this, if you are going backward, you are going in the wrong direction. I want to find you each day more thoughtful of others and less selfish. I want you to be more conscientious in your thoughts and in your work, and with regard to your duty toward others. This is growing in the right direction. Not doing this is growing in the wrong direction. Nor do I want you to feel that you are to strive for this spirit of growth for this 1 year alone, or for the time that you are here. I hope that you will continue to grow in the forward direction. Then, and this is more important still, we want you to take this habit of growth, this disposition to grow in the right direction, out with you from the school, and scatter it as an influence for good wherever you go. We want you to take it into your schools, for many of you are going to become teachers. We want you not only to begin it when you begin teaching in a humble way, but we want to see you grow and improve in it every year. We want to see you make your schoolhouses more attractive, to see you make everything in connection with your schools and your teaching better and stronger, to see you make a school more useful every year, that you remain as its teacher. Then, too, when you go out and get employment, no matter of what kind it may be, we want to see you grow better in that employment. We want to see you advance in ability, commanding always a larger salary, advancing in value to those who employ you. We want to see you grow in reputation for being honest, conscientious, intelligent, hard-working, no matter in what capacity you are employed. Some of you are going out to establish homes and settle down in home life. We want to see you grow in that direction. Nothing is so disheartening, there is nothing so discouraging, as to see a man or woman settle down in a home, and then not to see that home grow more beautiful, inside and outside, to see it, instead of this, each year grow dingy and dirty, because it each year receives less and less attention. We want Tuskegee students to go out from here and establish homes that will be models in every respect for those about them, homes that will show that the lives of the persons who have established them are models for the lives of those who live about them. If you do this, your lives are going to be a constant going forward, for, I repeat, your lives are going to be one thing or the other, continually going backward or continually going forward. Chapter 37. Last Words. We have come to the close of another school year. Some of you will go out from among us now, not to return. Others will go home for the summer vacation and return at the end of that for the next school year. As you go out, there is one thing that I want to especially caution you about. Don't go home and feel that you are better than the rest of the folks in your neighborhood because you have been away at school. Don't go home and feel ashamed of your parents because you think they don't know as much as you think you know. Don't think that you are too good to help them. It would be better for you not to have any education than for you to go home and feel ashamed of your parents or not want to help them. Let me tell you of one of the most encouraging and most helpful things that I have known of in connection with the life of our students after they leave this institution. I was in a southern city and going about among the homes of the people of our race. Among these homes I noticed one which was so neat-looking that it was conspicuous. I asked the person who was with me, "How is it that this house is in such good condition, looks so much better than some of the others in the neighborhood?" "It is like this," said the man who was accompanying me. "The people who live there have a son, whom they sent to your school, at considerable self-denial to themselves. This young man came home from school a few weeks ago. For some time after he came back, he did not have work to keep him busy, and so he employed his spare time in fixing up his parents' home. He fixed the roof and chimney, put new palings on the fence where they were needed, and did such things as that. Then he got a stock of paint and painted the house thoroughly, 2 coats outside and in. That is why the place looks so neat. Such testimony as that is very helpful. It shows that the students carry out from here the spirit which we try to inculcate. Another thing, go home and lead a simple life. Don't give the impression that you think education means superficiality and dress. Be polite to white and coloured people, both. It is possible for you, by paying heed to this, to do a great deal towards securing and preserving pleasant relations between the people of both races in the South. Try to have your manners in this respect so good that people will notice them and ask where you have been, at what school you learned to be so polite. You will find that politeness counts for a great deal, not only in helping you to get work, but in helping you to keep it. Don't be ashamed to go to church and Sunday school, to the Young Men's Christian Association and the Christian Endeavour Society. Show that education has only deepened your interest in such things. Have no going backward. Be clean in your person, your language, and in your thoughts. It seems appropriate during these closing days of the school year to re-emphasize, if possible, that for which the institution stands. We want to have every student get what we have, in our egotism, perhaps, called the Tuskegee spirit. That is, to get hold of the spirit of the institution. Get hold of that for which it stands, and then spread that spirit just as widely as possible, and plant it just as deeply as it is possible to plant it. In addition to the members of our graduating class, we have each year a large number of students who go out to spend their vacations. Some of these will return at the close of vacation, but some, for various reasons, will not return. Whether you go out as graduates, whether you go out to return or not to return, it is important that all of you get hold of the Tuskegee spirit, the spirit of giving yourselves, in order that you may help lift up others. In no matter how small a degree it may be, see that you are assisting someone else. Now, after a number of years' experience, the institution feels that it has reached a point where it can, with some degree of authority, give advice as to the best way in which you can spend your life. In the first place, as to your location, the place where you shall work, I very much hope that the larger part of the students who go out from Tuskegee will choose the country districts for their place of work, rather than the large cities. For one thing, you will find that the larger places are much better supplied with workers and helpers than is true of the towns, and especially of the country districts. The cities are better supplied with churches and schools, with everything that tends to uplift people, and they are at the same time much more prolific of those agencies which tend to pull people down. Notwithstanding this latter fact, the greater portion, by far, of those who need help live in the country districts. I think a census report will show that 80% of our people are to be found in the country and small towns. I advise you, then, to go into the country and the towns, rather than into the cities. Then, as to the manner of work, you must make up your minds, in the first place, as I have said before, that you are going to make some sacrifice, that you are going to live your lives in an unselfish way, in order that you may help someone. Go out with a spirit that will not allow you to become discouraged when you have opposition, when you meet with obstacles to be overcome. You must go with a determination that you are going to succeed in whatever undertaking you have entered upon. I do not attempt to give you specific advice as to the kind of work you shall do, but I shall say that in a general way I believe that you can accomplish more good, and perhaps this will hold good for the next 50 years here in the South, by taking a country school for your nucleus. Take 3 months' school and gradually impress upon the people of the community the need of having a longer school. Get them to add 1 month to 3 months, and then another month, until they get to the point where they will have 6, 7, or 8 months of school in a year. Then get them to where they will see the importance of building a decent schoolhouse, getting out of the one-room log cabin schoolhouse, and of having suitable apparatus for instruction. There are 2 things you must fix your mind on: the building of a suitable schoolhouse, and the arousing in the people, at the same time, a spirit that will make them support your efforts. In order to do this, you must go into the country with the idea of staying there for some time at least. Plant yourself in the community, and by economical living, year by year, manage to buy land for yourself on which to build a nice and comfortable home. You will find that the longer you stay there, the more the people will give you their confidence, and the more they will respect and love you. I find that many of our graduates have done excellent work by having a farm in connection with their schools. This is true also of many who did not remain here to graduate. I have in mind such a man. He has been teaching school in one of the counties of this state for 7 or 8 years. He has lengthened the school year to 8 months. He has a nice cottage with 4 rooms in it, and a beautiful farm of 40 acres. This man is carrying out the Tuskegee idea. There will be some of you who can spend your life to better advantage by devoting it to farming than to any other industry. I speak of farming particularly because I believe that to be the great foundation upon which we must build for the future. I believe that we are coming to the point where we are going to be recognized for our worth in the proportion that we secure an agricultural foundation. Throughout the South, we can give ourselves in a free, open way to getting hold of property and building homes, in a way that we cannot do in any other industry. In farming, as in teaching, no matter where you go, remember to go with the Tuskegee spirit. I want the boys to go out and do as Mr. N. E. Henry is doing. I want the girls to go out and do as Miss Anna Davis and Miss Lizzie Wright are doing. I want you to go out into the country districts and build up schools. I would not advise you to be too ambitious at first. Be willing to begin with a small salary and work your way up gradually. I have in mind one young man who began teaching school for $5 a month, another who began teaching in the open air under a tree. Then, too, I want you to go out in a spirit of liberality toward the white people with whom you come in contact. That is an important matter. When I say this, I do not mean that you shall go lowering your manhood or your dignity. Go in a manly way, in a straightforward and honorable way, and then you will show the white people that you are not of a belittling race, that the prejudice which so many people possess cannot come among you and those with whom you work. If you can extend a helping hand to a white person, feel just as happy in doing so as in helping a black person. In the sight of God, there is no color line, and we want to cultivate a spirit that will make us forget that there is such a line anywhere. We want to be larger and broader than the people who would oppress us on account of our color. No one ever loses anything by being a gentleman or a lady. No person ever lost anything by being broad. Remember that if we are kind and useful, if we are moral, if we go out and practice these traits, no matter what people say about us, they cannot pull us down. But on the other hand, if we are without the spirit of usefulness, if we are without morality, without liberality, without economy and property, without all those qualities which go to make a people and a nation great and strong, no matter what we may say about ourselves and what other people may say about us, we are losing ground. Nobody can give us those qualities merely by praising us and talking well about us. And when we possess them, nobody can take them from us by speaking ill of us.